One of the things, and this is a little bit in tribute for our wee Wookie, who, as we speak, will be on a big bird coming back to New Zealand from the UK, is that each time we speak to a union, whether it's the NZNO, Nurses Organisation, or whether it's the NZEI, or whether it's the salaried medical professionals, or whoever it is, at some stage during the conversation interview, Chewie will start slamming his hands on the table like this and go, general strike, general strike. And I don't know, we'll find out shortly if this is a general strike, but as Stuff is reporting it, a massive strike. As this arose by any other name would still smell as sweet, calling it a massive strike and not a general strike. But Stuff is saying a massive strike could hit schools, hospitals, health services, all on the same day. Now, is that just a coincidence? In fact, last time we had, I think, the PPT on, we kind of said to our guest, when you're deciding your plans, do you kind of go to a cafe and just by chance the nurses union are sitting at the next table, and then by chance, and he kind of laughed and said, officially, no. So where are we at with that? What we thought we'd do is we'd get on the National Secretary for the PSA, Fleur Fitzsimons, and Fleur can tell us all about it, give us all the goss. Fleur, welcome to the show.
Good evening.
Good evening. You heard that whole intro?
I did.
It can't be a general strike because, the police aren't there and that. But is this kind of as close to a general strike as we've heard of or seen?
Yes, I think it will be historic. There will be thousands of workers all over New Zealand taking strike action in support of their bargaining, because we're just not seeing bargaining offers at the table that keep pace with the cost of living or deliver important things that health service needs, like safe staffing levels and full rosters. And that's really what you're seeing, is a whole bunch of collective bargaining not delivering for different groups of workers and different unions. And that's leading to this historic strike that may take place on the 23rd of October.
It kind of, on some level, I'm going to read a couple of paragraphs from the Stuff article, it kind of feels like eventually enough of the little guys get gumption up to pick on the bully. You get enough of a crew together to go and do the bully over. But 2 paragraphs from this article, the 4 unions who had confirmed they were planning to participate in the coordinated strike were PSA, 2 teachers' unions, and the New Zealand Nurses Organisation. But on Tuesday, Council of Trade Union President Richard Wagstaff told Stuff he knew other unions were also considering joining the strike. Why are you actually doing it all together? What's the need for it to be a kind of consolidated front as opposed to that union doing that and that union doing that? What's it all about?
Well, we've seen a lot of strike action recently because this government's made a choice to value landlords and tax cuts at the expense of public services that all New Zealanders rely on. And in response to that, workers are flexing their industrial muscle. We've seen strike action throughout the public service. The nurses have taken a lot of strike action in the health system, so have the salaried medical specialists. And it really all boils down to workers not getting their fair share in a cost of living crisis. And it's not surprising to me that given the choices the government have made, workers are flexing their muscle and saying, we want a better health service. We know New Zealanders need it. It's not delivering for people who rely on it. And we need to be able to pay our own bills and support our own families. And that's not able to happen with the current pay offers on the table. So it's really down to the choice the government's made, I think, to value landlords and tax cuts over public services that we all need.
Yeah. Hey, Sunita, we kind of work, both you and I have a kind of work in our own line of business, our own businesses, that sort of thing as well. I don't know if unions are much to do with your world and what you do, but obviously unions are a part of, a valuable part of society because they look after groups of people that we need desperately. What are your thoughts around what you're hearing to do with, it can be anything actually, to do with this plan or how the government's treating the workers in these unions and stuff at the moment? Any thoughts?
Yeah, well, I actually trained to be a nurse. I was an ambulance officer for quite some time as well, so I totally understand. I never understood why teachers and nurses are constantly undervalued in all of the stuff that we do. We're essential and always undervalued and always getting screwed over. People just don't understand the work that's involved with it. And then with all this cost of living stuff going on, like, why is this still happening? Because like I did my nursing training, about 15, nearly 20 years ago, and it was happening then and it's still happening now, and it's been happening well before then. What's going on? What's going on, honestly? Good on them though. They need to stand up and make a stand for all of this, but I just feel like it's always going to be on deaf ears with this government.
Hey, what do you think, Fleur? Have we got a receptive government at all yet? Do you think, are you guys doing this all together to force their hand to be receptive?
Yeah, I mean, the point of a strike is to force a settlement and to show the strength of feeling among the workforce. And so, of course, that's what we want. We want the government to come to the table with a fair pay offer. I think we've got to also put it in the context of what this government's done for workers. Since they've been elected, they have been on have really implemented an agenda of constantly diminishing rights for working people. They got rid of fair pay agreements. They failed to increase the minimum wage by anywhere close to inflation since the time they've been in power. They also cancelled pay equity claims and gutted the Equal Pay Act. And I think it's important to remember when they did that, they said, oh, well, workers will still have collective bargaining. These are workforces which are predominantly dominated by women. And so it's not surprising, really, that with the absence of fair pay agreements, with what they've done to the minimum wage, with the cancelling of pay equity claims, workers are turning to collective bargaining to deliver for them. And when it doesn't, the choice they have is to take strike action or to accept the poor offers on the table. And I'm really proud of the workforces that are standing up to this government, because this government is an anti-worker government and it's been constantly implementing a agenda of diminishing rights for working people in this country.
Is this officially, like when I was talking to the teachers union about this, and I kind of said to them, do you have the other unions at the table next to you at the cafe? He went, well, officially no. How does this marry up between the legality around you guys negotiating together or separately? Or is it literally like wink, wink, nudge, nudge, we just happen to be doing it on the same day? How does that all work out itself?
So each strike is, and there'll be, if it goes ahead, there'll be a series of strikes on that day. So there'll be a strike by NZEI members, there'll be a strike by PSA members, there'll be a strike by NZNO members. So those are, in a legal sense, all separate strikes. And each of those strikes under the law have to be for advancing that collective bargaining. And that is true. That's the reality of what is being advanced through the particular strike that each union is undertaking. Of course, there's a degree of coordination on the 23rd of October, but the actual reason for the strike is to seek a better deal in the collective bargaining for teachers, for nurses, for mental health workers. So that's the reality, really. And it comes on top of quite a lot of strike action that's happened since this government's been in power. We've seen it in the public service. We've seen workforces that have never gone on strike before taking strike action. We took members at Pharmac out on strike. They were we have never been on strike there. So we are seeing a strong response to this government's agenda for working people.
Yeah, I think we spoke lastly at one of the teachers' unions not long ago, and they said teacher support staff had never been out on strike, and this is a part of what they're doing. So very clearly, you are striking on the same day. There is an element of coordination in that, but the teachers' union are striking. The collective we're talking about, the teachers' union collective is for the teachers. The nurses' union collective is for the nurses. It's not like all 5 unions or 6 or 7, whatever it ends up being. It's not the collective for all of them. In and of themselves, they're individually. That sort of happened to be on the same day. Is there ever a conversation around your in your boardroom, your work boardroom, or around your coffee table, however it rolls at your workplace, for actually a general strike, like involving all public servants? Does that ever come up? And if it does, how does that differ? I mean, I know how it differs, but why is that differing this time, and why aren't we going straight to that?
Yeah, it comes up all the time. And look, unions constantly think about all of the levers that we have and how we can put as much pressure as possible on the employer and the government, particularly in this environment. This is pretty close to a public sector widespread general strike. It is a large action and all over New Zealand with thousands of workers, but it is each of them for their own collective bargaining.
Mm-hmm.
Police talk a lot about lining up collective agreement expiry dates, working together, doing pattern bargaining. But at the end of the day, the issues for different workforces are quite different. So we've got 11,500 allied health workers who are currently considering whether they will take strike action on the 23rd of October. And that ballot's just underway. It's about to close tomorrow at 5 o'clock. That workforce has 60 professions within it, including people like social workers, physiotherapists, occupational therapists, anaesthetic technicians. So you can imagine the issues are really complex, really different. They have a whole lot of training issues that are different. They have a whole lot of demands of their employer in terms of professional development. They expect different things from rosters. There's a whole lot of different rostering arrangements. So when it comes to advancing the issues for them in the bargaining, they're quite different than another group of workers who might be trying to advance something in relation to, for example, we've got mental health workers who are considering going on strike on that day. The issues for them are very different. They, one of the big issues that we've been facing in mental health facilities is the police withdrawal from support for mental health and 111 call-outs. There's a big issue around security and safety of that workforce, particularly when rosters aren't filled or people are doing long hours. So in the bargaining, what tends to happen is you get into discussions, but those discussions are very workforce specific. And the reality is that the allied workforces and the mental health workforces and teachers and nurses all have different issues that they want to advance at the bargaining table. So you've got to balance that when you're running a big industrial dispute as well.
I'm just thinking, because obviously the healthcare strikers, that'll be under sort of the health Ministry of Health, that'll be under Simeon Brown, and the education will be under Erica Stanford, and this will cause obviously a lot of headaches for Parliament because multiple ministers and ministerials will be tied up in it. Do you think all going out on one day makes the cases for the individual groups more or less likely? Like, what is now the reason for all going out on the same day? What does that add to your case? Or at least, what does that add to the pressure that you're bringing for your case?
I mean, I think it does send a really strong message that each of these collective bargaining processes are not delivering for the workers, and they're not delivering to the extent that these workers have decided to take industrial action on this day. That is a decision that workers take really seriously. Even running a strike ballot is something that unions take very seriously. It's a big deal, and particularly for these professions who are so committed to their work. And in the health system, obviously, we've got to go through a process of life-preserving services, make sure there is a skeleton staff in place. So the whole process leading up to the strike is a lot of work for everybody and not something that anyone takes lightly. But what I would say, if the government are that worried about it, they should try and settle it. Other national governments have shown quite a lot of enthusiasm and commitment to settling industrial disputes. They've, actually treated union officials and unions seriously. They've respected the workforces. They've attempted to sit down and work issues through. What we've seen from this government so far is name-calling, aggression, and political hijinks. So really, they only have themselves to blame for the reaction that we're seeing in the community to what they've done to the health system.
Yeah. I've got one more question about that shortly. But Sunita, before we let Fleur go, any more questions or comments for her?
Oh, no, I'm just listening intently on this. It just rolls me up. It really rolls me up. I just do not know what this government's doing, to be honest.
I guess I want to know, Fleur, the last thing is, we hear lies from the ministers, and we know they're lies, like it's the $120,000 that nurses earn, and then very quickly we can disprove that by, having eyes and looking at what the nurses earn. Or the other one that we're hearing from Simeon Brown, and I guess it's from other ministers as well for their departments, is how much this will put the customer, in their case, the patient, out. And I'm wondering how it feels on the inside looking out to be gaslit like that, because we know the stats and we know that an understaffed ward in a hospital puts out a patient far more and puts the health and the safety of the patient in far more peril than having a surgery delayed by a day. So what does it feel like from the inside being gaslit by the people you're supposed to be able to negotiate in good faith with before you even get to the table?
Yeah, I think you've picked up a really important point there. Industrial disputes, like any argument or any dispute, don't get resolved if the side with power racks things up. It's a very unhelpful approach from the minister, and it's quite unusual, including being quite unusual from National Party cabinet ministers of previous governments. The thing is as well, it won't wash with the public. The public are worried about what this government is doing to our health system. They see understaffing. They bear the brunts of the effects of it. So it's not only very unhelpful in terms of being quite inflammatory and undermining the ability to settle the dispute, but it's not going to wash with the public either. We've been overwhelmed with support from the public for health workers. And, you just have to look at what they've done to administrative and clerical roles. This government forced cuts on Te Whatu Ora, which resulted in voluntary redundancies of admin and clerical workers who do important things like scheduling surgery, transcribing notes. And all of that is now being pushed on to other health workers, and the public are bearing the brunt and feeling the cost, really. So I would really urge Simeon Brown to be mature about this, to work on settling it instead of playing political games with people who are going on strike and who are actually the heroes of our public health system.
Yeah. And I just want to use that term again, gaslighting, because the thing that's happening is even when a reporter dares to do their job, or an interviewer dares to do their job and points out that what they're saying is not true, and then in the next interview they say exactly the same thing. It's the only word for it. They're gaslighting. But actually, finally, Fleur, and I know you haven't been in this PSA position incredibly long, and because I'm going to kind of ask you a historical question, which you may not have personal knowledge of, but I'm sure you've heard. What is the vibes around how the unions, PSA, others, are treated and work with, for example, a Labour-led government, because no one's saying there's not industrial action there, versus a national-led government? Is there a clear difference that you understand?
Yeah, and I think it boils down to respect. Labour governments traditionally respect unions more than national governments do. But this national government is in a field of its own. The previous John Key government met regularly with union leaders. John Key came to the PSA conference. He was welcome. It wasn't the friendliest reception, but he was treated with respect and with dignity. We can't even get a meeting with the Prime Minister, nor can the Council of Trade Unions. I have to give her dues. Last week, I did meet with Brooke Van Velden to talk about her changes to the Employment Relations Act, and I respect her for that meeting. It didn't go very well. And we meet regularly with Judith Collins and Nicola Willis, but the attitude isn't one of how can we engage, how can we understand where the workforce is at, how is morale. It is really, we are going to do this, we are going to do that. They're happy to listen, but it's not based on that fundamental respect. And it comes through in their policies. It's not just in how they treat union leaders. It comes through in what they're doing. This government is introducing harsh changes to the Employment Relations Act, which basically amount to fire at will for every worker. And if you're going to do that, if you have such disdain for working people, then meeting with union officials is the least of our problems, to be honest.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm going to repackage what you've just said to me. What you've just said to me is typically the national-led government aren't best friends, but you can respect the office of the Prime Minister. Typically the Labour-led government are a government that respects the unions and works with them in a different way. And then you've got these guys, which are a completely different case altogether. That's what I hear you saying.
Yeah, I think that's right. And look, they have got, if I talk to retired union officials who lived through the Employment Contracts Act, where unions in this country were absolutely decimated almost overnight, they will say what they are doing when it comes to fire at will is worse than the Employment Contracts Act.
Wow.
Every New Zealand worker will be in insecure employment. Imagine the ramifications of that within workplaces, how you treat managers, the difference it encourages. Imagine the impacts on things like borrowing to be able to afford a house and repay mortgages. It's a disgraceful attack on workers. And this is just another one of the real agenda of diminishing rights. I mean, the pay equity betrayal was constitutional vandalism on a scale we've never seen. But what they're doing to the Employment Relations Act and that process around dismissals and having secure work is just next level.
Yeah. Before we sign off for the night and say goodnight, Fleur, do you have anything else that we need to know? Anything we need to be keeping our eyes on between now and you said 23rd October and those sort of 3-week period?
Yeah, well, obviously, we're really hopeful that the employers will come to the table and settle this dispute. We'd rather not go ahead with a strike action, but this feeling among members and workplaces is that we need to stand up for public health and we need to make sure that we really have a strong voice on the day and at the pickets. And so my message really is come along to the picket line. It should have a really energising feel. There'll be picket lines all over the country. Most of them will be in the middle of the day. And yeah, it'd be great to see as many people as possible. Even members of the community who aren't on strike are very welcome to come and support down the picket line.
Awesome, Fleur. National Secretary of the PSA, that is Fleur Fitzsimons. Sorry, Fleur, thank you for joining us. And look, we should definitely, we all hope that it doesn't end up being a strike, because that's the idea of announcing the strike in the future, saying to the government, let's talk between now and then. But if there is, or if there isn't, we will be great to have you back on before the actual strike action.
Pleasure.
All right. All the best, Fleur. Thanks for your time.